Alright, good afternoon, ladies. This screencast is going to be a quick introduction to Chapter 13, Dividing America. If you need to, please pause this screencast and log on to Moodle and download the Chapter 13 outline. So we're going to continue talking about the problems that expansion posed specifically over the spread of slavery, and that's going to be just a continuing theme in this unit. As the North, was emancipating more and more slaves, the South was wanting to expand slavery into new territories that were being gained by the United States, such as within the Louisiana Purchase or with the Mexican Cession or Texas. So this idea known as sectionalism is going to develop, and sectionalism is defined as intense loyalty to a region and one's regional interests. So the North is very concerned about the northern affairs and the northern vision for the country, whereas the South is the opposite, concerned about, the southern vision and southern affairs. They kind of take different stances on different issues, and they're more supporting their own regional interests and visions over the greater good of the whole country, and that's just kind of going to continue taking a toll on the relationship of America as a whole. So we're going to see other specific problems with expansion develop. Probably one of the earliest, kind of going back in time a little bit, is the Missouri crisis, which was one of the first big crises over the expansion of slavery. So in 1819, Missouri had applied for statehood, and it wanted to be a slave state. This would have upset the balance between free and slave states in the Union. Meaning that if Missouri had been admitted and accepted as a slave state, there would have been more slave states than non-slave states. Why does the balance matter? The balance is important because of representation in Congress. If there are more states that are in favor of slavery, then when any sort of slavery issue comes up to vote within the House or Senate, that's more votes for the pro-slavery side. Remember sectionalism, each side's kind of voting on issues that are going to help their side of the country, so that's kind of why northern states would obviously be opposed to admitting Missouri as a slave state. New York Congressman James Talmadge, I realize I didn't put that on the screen, that's Tallmadge, James Talmadge Jr. He had actually moved to ban further introduction of slaves to Missouri and to gradually emancipate or free the slaves that had already been living there, instead of allowing it to be a slave state. It's kind of a very tense situation over this issue of allowing slavery to spread. Henry Clay will actually come up with a solution to this crisis. He is nicknamed the Great Compromiser, as he is good at coming up with many solutions, others that we'll talk about in the unit as well. He will come up with the Missouri Compromise. As part of the Missouri Compromise, Missouri would be admitted as a slave state, and Maine would be admitted as a free state. You can kind of look on the map and see this. Please recall that Maine was always a territory within the United States, but it was a part of Massachusetts, which really doesn't make sense because the two don't even touch, so this officially kind of separates Maine from the rest of Massachusetts, giving it its own level of statehood, and then by creating it as a separate free state, you're keeping that balance in Congress between free and slave states. To resolve any further issues, they established the Missouri Compromise line, which was at the 3630, you see that on the map, line of latitude, just above the Arkansas Territory. To just prevent future conflicts, all land above this line that was part of the Louisiana Purchase would be closed off to slavery, meaning slavery would not be allowed in any of the land above the line, Missouri being the only exception, obviously, because it itself is above the line. But for future unorganized territory, keeping in mind that this event took place before we actually controlled parts of Texas and the Mexican Cession, slavery would be banned in the North, but be allowed south of that line in the Arkansas Territory. This did solve the problem for the time being, but it's very much a short-term solution, and just going to cause this, we're going to see this develop into further problems down the road, the more territory that was acquired by the United States. Interesting to consider whether or not it was effective, though. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Wilmot proviso. The Wilmot proviso is going to be a document or suggestion made by Pennsylvania Democrat David Wilmot. He proposed that slavery be excluded from any new territory that was gained in the Mexican-American War, so within the Mexican Cession, just like, let's ban that all together. And Congress voted on this measure several times, but it never, ever passed. This is just showing continued sectionalism developing between northern and southern politicians, which is just further dividing the country as a whole. This was a quick introduction, but we're going to stop here for today. Please write down any questions you have, and we'll wrap up the first half of Chapter 13 in class on Monday. I hope you all have a good weekend.